Now, like I say, I'm not here to be the bearer of bad tidings, but we need to know what we're dealing with. Because what I want to focus on is what we have to do to turn this around. Let me also, before I leave this chart and go on to the other one, apply this to Social Security and Medicare. Because I am convinced, and I'm going to talk more about this in a minute, I am convinced that if starting with this election, we turn this around and balance the budget, I say in 5 years. If we do that, we can protect Social Security and Medicare and veterans benefits. If we do not, if we go another 2 years, and 2 years from now 25 cents of every dollar is going for interest, then I do not believe we can protect the entitlements. I mean, we are not going to have the money. So we are at a crisis point. By the way, in terms of debt to GDP ratio, we're 5 years away from where Greece was a year ago, when they essentially went into default. Okay? Do I know that that's not the only indicator of default? But if you look at debt to GDP, we're 5 years away from Greece. And that ought to raise some concern. Now, let me just add to that, because we're very well aware of this, and I'm a numbers guy, okay? And I'm a businessman, successful businessman. And I want you to know, as a farmer, and just as an aside, okay, 2 generations, the seed companies used to give farmers hats. A generation ago, they upped that a little bit and gave us duct tape and jackets. Now they give us calculators. Why? Because farming is all about numbers. Okay, it's all about numbers. And it's about other things too, but it's primarily numbers. And so farmers carry their calculators and GPSs and the like. It's all about numbers. So anyway, we have to get the numbers straight. I'm going to go back to some of that, but I want you to see another chart. This chart, which I've taken from the Heritage Foundation, neither of these are my charts. I mean, I have my own charts too, but this is the Heritage Foundation chart. This chart is on the growth of the federal government top line compared to the growth in personal income, median personal income bottom line. And I just saw today that the Heritage Foundation has a new chart which updates this to 2012. This only goes to 2008. But I want you to know I'm too cheap to do another chart. They cost me about 75 bucks, so I'm going to use the old one. But I'll tell you how it updates. If you go to 2012, the top line is off the chart by about 8 inches. And the bottom line drops 4 percentage points. And so if you go to 2012, personal income has increased between 27 and 28% since 1970. Government has grown by over 300%. And so straight off the Heritage Foundation website today, federal government has grown 12 times faster than personal income. Now, when I first saw this chart, it reminded me of something I used to do in my 20s at the county fair. And I have a hunch one or two of you have done the same thing and have at least seen it done. And that is, at the county fair, we used to have these contests called tractor pulls, and I know there still are some of those. But the tractor pull consisted of hooking a tractor up to a big sled with a big metal sled, and there'd be some weight on the sled. And then some of us would stand along the side of the sled, and as it went by, we would step on. We'd be in a designated spot, and the guy by us, we would step on to add weight to the sled. And of course, the idea was to see how far this given tractor could pull that sled. Okay. Am I the only one here that's ever done that? Anybody else? Okay. My brother Paul has done it. Any of you seen it done? Sure, a lot of you have seen it done. And the point I want to make is that I don't care how big that diesel engine is. And I entered the contest once with my John Deere 466, which is a wonderful diesel engine. All right. I don't care how big the diesel engine is. You put enough weight on that sled, you're going to stop that engine. Might be traction, might be power, might be combination, but I don't care. You put enough weight on that sled, you're going to stop that sled. The reason I mention that is this chart describes what we have done to the economy of the United States of America. The free market engine in the United States is a big engine, it's very strong, very powerful. But I don't care how big the engine is, you put enough weight on that engine, you're going to stop the sled. So why is our recovery so anemic? Okay? Why did the unemployment rate bump back up to 8.3%? I know a month ago, there were more people that were added to the disability rolls than there were people who found new employment. So this is not a good recovery, right? We all know that. Why is it so anemic? Ladies and gentlemen, there's too much weight on the sled. And the weight is weight in terms of regulations. It's weight in terms of too much government spending. It's weight in terms of the added expenditures that the Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare, is adding on small business. It's weight in terms of artificially raising energy prices and many other things. We have put so much weight on the sled of free enterprise that it isn't powerful enough to generate the kind of recovery we need for employment and for generating tax revenue to deal with the deficit. And so if we're going to get out of this debt crisis, and I use that word because I believe it's true, it's not just a debt problem, this is a debt crisis. If we're going to get out of the debt crisis, we have to do two things simultaneously. We have to reduce the expenditures over 5 years, and we have to free up private enterprise by rolling back wacko regulations, by all kinds of things, so that our free enterprise system can grow at, let's say, 4% instead of less than 2%. And let me give you the numbers, okay? These are the numbers. If we can get our economic growth up to 4% a year, which I'm convinced we can do by taking the shackles off of free enterprise. As I said, Australia last quarter was 5%, and we need to do what they did. And I'll talk about that later if I get a chance. And if we, okay, if we reduce spending by 3 cents on the dollar for 5 years, we will balance the budget. So you bring up the tax base by economic activity, you bring down the expenditures by 3% a year, or 3 cents on the dollar a year, we will balance the budget in 5 years. But I'm convinced to do this, we have to set a limit each year on how much we can spend. And that, to date, does not happen. By the way, another thing that does not happen is the whole matter of having an economic strategy for jobs growth, for economic growth. And I'm not going to tell you that we have a bad strategy for economic growth. The problem is, we don't have a strategy. There is no plan, folks. All right? And I'm not saying we have a bad plan for controlling spending. There is no plan. All right? There is no plan for controlling spending. And so what we're looking at is incredible irresponsibility. And the chart we just saw is just hard numbers evidence that is the case. So we have to change the system. It's not that there are bad people. The system is broken. And so we have to change the system, and the key to changing the system is setting a limit on how much we can spend. Now, yesterday I was at Farm Fest, and yesterday at Farm Fest I was asked the question, well, Mr. Quist, would you support the Farm Bill? And the question is, as is. And I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, I believe, before we look at any spending bills, we have to have a limit on how much we can spend. Because if we do not do that, we will not bring the debt crisis under control. And we are headed for bankruptcy. And I want you to know I am in concrete. Now I just want to add one footnote to that, then I'm going to welcome your questions and comments. Those of you who know me, and I know there are at least half a dozen of you out there that know me pretty well, know that I am an absolutely dyed-in-the-wool, avid walleye fisherman. Okay? And I could be up in Lake of the Woods in my Lund Tyee with my 90-horse 4-stroke Yamaha, okay, trolling lead core for walleyes. All right? Why am I doing this? Well, it's partly because of those 37 grandkids. That's part of it. The other part is I know that I can make a difference. And you can say, why do you want to be one out of 538 people? Okay, I know I can make a difference. And my wife Julie gave you one example of that. And I could give you a lot, but I just want to give you the detail of one. Back in 1998, I'm the guy that identified the reason why the education experiment known as the profile of learning was a disaster. And I want you to know, there are 4.5 million people in this state. I held a press conference first in St. Paul and then a press conference in Mankato. And I want you to know, I was all by myself. Okay? I was all by myself. And Bob and Bev Nesbitt know that to be true. So people started joining. One of the people that joined is a lady by the name of Michelle Bachman. A lot of people say, Al Quist, you gave Michelle Bachman her start in politics. And there's a sense in which that is true. I don't want to take undue credit, but that's how she got her start. So one person stepping up to the plate, Renee Doyle asked me, Al, how long is this going to take? I said it's going to take 5 years. That's exactly what it took us. None of us held office. It was totally a citizens movement. All right, totally a citizens movement. 5 years later, we threw out this terrible education experiment. By the way, what it consisted of was bureaucrats writing lesson plans for teachers. And so it's all about control by people sitting in offices in St. Paul telling teachers what they had to teach and how they were going to teach it. And as a teacher, I couldn't imagine anything that would be worse for education. Now, of course, the people behind it never called it that, but that's what it was. And so one of the things I can do is I can read a bill, I can study something, and I can tell you what it is. Now, 2.5 years ago, the marriage tax. Now, let me tell you how bad this is. Let's say there is a married couple or part of a married couple here where you have a combined income of $60,000 a year, doing pretty well. Just hypothetical example. And when I mentioned this at Farm Fest yesterday, because at Farm Fest most farmers have private insurance, and most farmers are married. Okay, not all, but most. Married couple, private insurance, $60,000 a year. Under Obamacare, if you are married, you will pay $10,425 more each year for your health insurance than if you're single. There is extraordinary discrimination against married people in Obamacare. Now you may be thinking, how can that be true? Well, Minnesota Public Radio did a fact check on what I just said about 2 months ago, and they call it their polygraph test, and they report, yeah, Al Quist is absolutely right in everything he's saying. Now, since I reported this and made an issue of it 2.5 years ago, the Heritage Foundation has verified everything I've said, and there have been 2 research committees in the U.S. House of Representatives that have verified everything I said. About 2.5 years ago, I held a press conference first in St. Paul, and then in Mankato. And I want you to know, 300 million people in this country, I was there all by myself. All right? Nobody else. So why do I say this? I say this because I want you to know I have the research skills, I have the knowledge to know what I know, I have the confidence in what I know, I have the courage to be there all by myself if that's what it takes. I want to tell you, I am here because I can make a difference. And if I didn't think I could make a difference, I would be in my fishing boat out up on Lake of the Woods, because that is my love. But our country is too wonderful a thing to waste. Okay, I've talked, I think, a little longer than I planned, but anyway, the key is we have to loosen the shackles on free enterprise, and we have to set a limit each year on how much we can spend. And we can't be spending bills until we have that limit in place, and then we have to live by that limit. And we can debate about what's more important and what's less important and what we have to change, but we have to live by the limit. And if we can't do that financially, we have lost it.